At first, Daniel, I just wanted to thank you for giving me a little bit about your time, and I hope you're doing great at Facts.
I'm doing really well, and it's an absolute pleasure to talk to you and to be here. I'm enjoying the show very, very much.
And so I'm always starting by the most basic question because it's the first time we speak together. So I just would like you to introduce yourself a little bit for the people who might not know who you are.
My name is Daniel Henriques. I've been working majorly as a comic book inker since 2011, if I'm not mistaken. I started at Marvel, did most of my career at DC, and currently I'm doing pretty much all of my work for Frank Miller Presents, and Todd McFarlane Productions.
Frank Miller and Todd McFarlane, which are quite little names in the game. I hope they will be doing some great comics books at some point, but it's great.
Yes, it's I even myself, I'm still baffled of how I am working with these two legends.
You just mentioned it like that, like it was nothing. Like I'm just working for Frank Miller and Todd McFarlane. That's just another day in the comic industry. But at first, so you said you were doing the inking from since 2011. I guess my point was it a plan to have a career in the inking or even though in the comic book industry before that?
That was my debut, and I've never really tried to break into the industry very hard per se, because again, I'm from Portugal. We don't have a gigantic presence as far as comic books goes, so I never even really knew how to try to get into the industry. But I think as most kids, I started just wanting to draw and all of that. But then I eventually discovered what it was, that there was a craft of inking, and just even one step back actually before that, because what got me into comics or art in general was Dragon Ball and Spawn. So two very different properties, but those are the two properties that made me want to do art. And once I discovered Spawn and I started to see that you had, writer, penciler, inker, etc., as a fan of the artists and writers and everything, and I discovered inking, that's what I wanted to do because of the collaborative process. And as a fan, that felt like it was the best for me as a professional and as a fan, because I could work with my idols. So that's why I started doing comic book inking. And I only did like one or two pieces, and I put it on Facebook. And I was lucky enough that a inker that I really look up to even today, Danny Henriques, saw my work, and he reached out to me to try out for his Crime Lab Studios that he had at the time. And that's pretty much how I entered in the business. I did a sample and ended up doing some work for Marvel over Paul Pelletier. Yes, I think that's how you say it. Tony Moore. It was some Venom and some Hulk stuff. So very briefly, but that was how I entered in the industry.
How would you say you learned about the inking? If there's like any practice, do you do it just on your gut? Is it just a feeling? But I guess there are some rules to do a good inking.
There are some rules that one should follow. And again, in the beginning, I try, and even now, of course, but in the beginning, I try to be mindful of all of that. You need to do like plane separations, the different planes, like first, second, all of that, textures, all of that. But I think what's very, very important to keep in your mind is that we are there as the aid to the penciler. We are the second step in the art, so we need to be careful to enhance what's there without detracting what's already given to us. And I think sometimes that's forgotten, be it because of deadlines or something. We can try, or a lot of people have a very strong inking style per se, and it might end up burying the penciler, which I don't think it's very healthy. If we're doing it's okay to add certain nuances, but again, the main objective is always to complement and enhance what's underneath. And so, but again, textures, making sure that wood looks like wood, metal looks like metal. That's a very important thing of our process, because that is why we're there. The penciler will do it very fast so we can move through the pages, and then it is our job to define all of that and make it look good. So that's a lot of things like line width that I kept in mind since the beginning. But nowadays, if I'm completely honest, it's very by instinct. I don't even really think about it. In the beginning, I was very careful because all of my lines needed to be a certain way and everything. I don't even think about it anymore. I don't even count lines per se. I'm I'm trying to get, if a penciler has a lot of hatching, I'm not worried about doing every single line that he put down. I could do a lot more, or I could do a lot less. It's the feeling of how that specific gradation should look. And I don't even think about it, to be honest. It just comes out.
Do you work digitally or on paper?
I work both. For the last few years, I've been working a lot more digitally, but I started my career purely traditional.
Because my question was like, if you're just working digitally, you could just see it, like if you're doing all the hatching, how does it look, and you can erase it and do less hatching, and you can compare. But if you're working on paper, you just have one shot.
But it's pretty much the same thing, to be honest, because even in my digital work, I very rarely do that. I don't use a lot of gimmicks, to be honest. The digital, what it gives me is, first of all, mobility. I can work on the fly. Even right now, I'm here in Facts, but I've been working at the hotel, finishing some Spawn pages that I'm helping out. So that's one of the benefits of.
That's what I also like to just say, yeah, I'm just finishing some Spawn pages.
Well, which is really nice. I do enjoy it a lot. But for me, like I said, it's more that. Like, then again, when I do traditional, I usually use the nib a lot more. So that dipping in ink, you don't have that in digital. So you'd be surprised at the amount of time you save just because you're not dipping your tool, or even then spotting the blacks. Because again, I only use 1 or 2 brushes digitally. I don't use a big amount of things. So that's where why I use the digital is more for that kind of speed, not really because of erasing, to be honest.
And can you do inking if you don't know how to draw? Did you take art lessons?
I never really took art lessons apart from what we had mandatorily in school in Portugal. And this is going to be a controversial reply, maybe.
Yes.
Response. But I mean, I think to be a proper inker, you do need to know how to draw. Because even when inking actually started, you know, like back in the maybe 70s or 80s, I'm not sure how far back it goes, but most inkers were doing what's called finishes. They got really very, very, very loose pencils, and they had to finish it. They had to draw. They had to do all of that. Nowadays, pencilers are very, very tight. So, and again, a lot of inkers will hate to hear this, but there's a lot of tracing nowadays. It's not really finishing because we already get the pencils so finished sometimes. And then there are maybe certain inkers who, when given a lot looser pencils, if they don't know how to draw, they won't be able to properly finish it. Like, for example, in the work that I'm doing now with Philip 10, in Philip 10, he's amazing as far as, like, he loves the collaboration. So he always wants me to add my own flavor in all of that.
So you're speaking about Ronin book 2?
Well, we've worked on several projects, but Ronin, for example, it's a good example, because that I could even bring, because other than Philip, which already is a really great collaboration, because he doesn't want to be very tight, and he wants me to always add something to the art. He wants the process of the collaboration. He doesn't want me to just trace what he has. But then even that led, Frank himself did issue 4 and issue 6, and I end up working over Frank, but it wasn't just inks, it was actually finishes, because Frank wasn't writing the book. He was giving Philip layouts, like loose layouts that he had, and Philip would work from there. So he gave me those layouts, and I had to finish them and, again, do hatching, shadows, textures, like all of that. So I did have to draw in a lot of those without, like, knowing how to draw, with no foundations in art. That would have been impossible.
So you mentioned the tracing, and I've got the feeling also that a lot of people, readers or even though in the industry, think that the work of an inker is just like just do the black trade over the pencil. So that's not the case.
No, I disagree completely with that. I mean, it exists in the industry. I'm not trying to criticize anybody, of course, but you do see that there sometimes certain work is just traced per se, but the majority, if you're having a proper inked work, it is enhanced, and by enhancing, you need to know how to draw to be able to get what the penciler gave you and put it a level above.
But in the terms of if an artist has a very loose pencils, and that you have like to almost I don't know, draw everything in its place, wouldn't be like that the inker would be the artist and the penciler will just be a layout?
Well, that really depends on the complexity of what's given to us, because sometimes there are such loose layouts that the inker will be credited as a penciler because he was in essence just grabbing a very, very loose outline to do things. But so again, it varies on how finished the work is. In what I got from Frank per se, again, all of the structure, everything was there, so it wasn't to that point. I'm by no means the penciler in that job. I drew a lot of things, but it was enhancing what he had. Like I said, shadows, that kind of stuff, certain backgrounds, textures, a lot of things that I did have, and to redraw certain stuff, because there were certain costumes that Frank didn't even had properly. He was based on the old series, and Philip was doing a new so that kind of stuff. But again, what Frank gave me, or even what Philip gives me, is not as loose to the point that I would be credited as a penciler. But again, if it's really, really, really loose, it will be credited, because there's certain pencilers who sometimes get layouts from other pencilers when the book has to move a lot faster. Yeah. So that does exist even with other pencilers.
And do you feel that the work of the inkers is being correctly recognized or acknowledged in the common discussion that we have in comics?
I mean, I think inking, unfortunately, inking as a craft is disappearing a little bit, to be honest, because nowadays more and more artists, pencilers, are doing their own inks. Be it, and there's good reasons and there's bad reasons. There's good reasons because a lot of pencilers just want to have control of their identity per se, because even the best inker, when he's doing the work, might not 100% be able to translate what the penciler wanted, and it might be the best penciler the inker in the industry. It depends on how open the penciler is for the collaboration. Then there's also the bad side of it, which is as rates go down, unfortunately, sales of the books waver. You see a lot more pencilers also wanting to ink to get that extra rate. So unfortunately, that's also part of why there's less inking.
Is it something that you have been a witness to, the lowering of the rates of the page rates?
Oh, yes. And again, I'm doing this for a few, like a little bit over a decade, and I see a big change. So I can only imagine, like my friends who helped me, like be it Danny Henriques or Jonathan Glapian, who was like instrumental in getting me to do this professionally. I can only even imagine what they saw happen during the years. But even me, in a little over a decade, I see that, yes, there's, especially lately, there is a big push to lower rates in that sense, unfortunately, in certain places. Like I said, for example, with Todd and Frank, I'm having the best time of my life in all fields, to be honest. So it really depends on the company that you're working with.
Yeah, and I know. I think everybody knows which company we're talking about, but without naming anyone, because that's not the aim of the podcast. Could you say from 10 years ago to right now, how much would be the rate for an inked page?
Yeah, rates really vary, to be honest. I wouldn't even really be able to give a gauge, because from Boom to Marvel to DC and everything, it's a huge spectrum. But like I was offered recently, about a year and a half ago, maybe, a book from one of the big two, and they were offering me a rate that, again, in 2011, when I started my very first project, my rate was higher than what they offered me now. So as a newbie, they offered me more than they offered me as over 10 years professional working in the industry.
Okay, that's quite shocking.
And again, it's not everywhere. Like I said, there's a lot of places who still pay well. It really depends.
But do you have an explanation about why would the rates go down?
I think a lot of things are being corporized. Like, for example, the big two, it's all about the character. It's all about the brand. In artists, and again, I'm not trying to criticize. Everything has its place. I love, for example, all of my time at DC. I worked there for quite a big time. But we do see it as the big companies get bought. Marvel get bought by Disney. DC got bought, I think, was AT&T, and then somebody else, I don't even remember. Discovery, yeah. Exactly. And that always...
They got the 3 buyers in 4 years.
Right, and
like
there's
that.
Always big restructuring. Yeah. There was a lot of editors who were fired.
Yeah.
pencilers and inkers, color, everybody ended up shifting. Like it really shifted the industry to a certain degree. And a lot of those companies then just think about the numbers that they have to tell, their shareholders. I don't know exactly how it works, but it definitely affects the industry.
Okay. How many different artists can you ink in a month?
Oh, I mean, I tried.
Or maybe not in a month, but how many different artists can you ink at the same time?
Well, I mean, it really depends. It's more about the amount of pages than the artists. Because, like, if I was given a different page of an artist per day, I could do 20 or 30 different artists. But in general, the inkers, like the pencilers, do one book a month, to be honest, so like 20 something pages. In the majority of my career, I always tried to just keep with one book, and I was lucky that I always had long-lasting collaborations. So I worked with Brian Hitch for quite a few years, then I worked with Robson Rocha for quite a few years, and now with Philip Tan. So I had other artists I work here and there, but those are like the big names that I worked with. And so I never jumped much from book to book or artist to artist, which I'm very grateful for, because it's part of that collaboration that I always wanted to when I entered the business.
And do you see that maybe there's some kind of evolution in the way of your inking for example, from the first issue you inked Robson to the last issue, that maybe
100%, because then I loved Robson, and he unfortunately passed away, but my collaboration with him was amazing, because other than just the work, and I think that's what the collaboration entails, is we would talk, and he would tell me what he likes, what he doesn't like. There was never like fights or anything. It was more just about the growth. And just that conversation, and book to book to book to book, it gives an evolution to the work, and we get accustomed to working with each other. And I really do think it's the only way to have a proper team, like you have, for example, Jim Lee and Scott Williams, or Greg Capullo and Jonathan Glapion, who worked for so long too on Batman and kept working until recently. That now Jonathan is doing all of his work, but
there was also Danny Mickey with
and Danny Mickey on Spawn. Yes, Greg Capullo and Danny Mickey on Spawn. They was also years and years.
It's funny because we know in the history of comics that there were some relationships between the pencilers and inkers that didn't work well, but for you it's really a matter of just getting the best final page out.
Oh yes, 100%. It's really, because like I said, it's to a certain degree, even though it has its own craft and artistry to it, but it is a support position in a sense, and so the goal really is to get two artists, and the two artists together make the best possible page. To a certain degree, you create a third artist in the final work, because for example, Jim Lee, when he inks himself, he looks a certain way, but when he's inked by Scott Williams, he looks different. Not necessarily better or worse, it's just different. And Jim Lee must love that collaboration, because they've been doing it for many, many years. And when you have other inkers help out and ink Jim, they don't look like what Scott does. It looks like that because they owned that style and feeling to the work themselves. So I think that's very important.
So how do you so you mentioned that you did not go from many different artists, but I guess that each time you go to ink a new artist, it's like you have to reassert the way that you're going to approach his style.
Oh yes. I always try to think about it differently, because like I said, it would be very, very hard to ink the different pencilers exactly the same way and get good results. Part of being an inker is having that, being able to be versatile and adapt to the penciler. Because if you have a strong style per se that you think as an inker, you're just railroading a lot of what the pencilers are giving you, because it is impossible to ink a lot of different pencilers all the same way. Some are similar and you use kind of the same approach, but I would say a lot of them are different. Like for example, an artist that I also work with, Victor Bogdanovich, he pencils digitally for the majority of his work,
which looks a little bit like Greg Capullo. I don't know if you
yes,
agree.
he's heavily influenced by Greg, but then he has his own twist per se on some digital textures and all kinds of stuff that if it were to be approached, for example, like I inked Robson or how I inked Philip, it just wouldn't work. It has to be approached differently, or we lose the identity of the penciler. And to me, it needs to remain on the page, the identity of the penciler.
So is there some rational way to explain how that works for you? Like, for example, you'd say, okay, so that's Victor, so I have to put more blacks on my line, or you know, or use a different brush? How do you know that you're going to do the good inking, fitting?
I mean, that's a good question, because like I said, for me it's almost by instinct. I don't really even think, because even digitally I don't really switch tools. And when traditional, it's also again, like I'm majorly pens and nibs. I don't use brush that much other to certain things, and I always use the same thing even for different pencilers. In digitally, I also have like just a couple of brushes that, and they're the same that I use for all of the pencilers. I just adapt how I do things, be it the outlines, if it's more soft, if it's more angular, if it's thicker, if it's thinner, the hatching, even the textures need to be handled differently. Fur, wood, a lot of artists are more textured in how they do that stuff, and then I might go even further. A lot other artists like to keep it simpler. So I think it's more those small things, and be able to adapt and adjust to those small nuances that each penciler has, more than the tools themselves. Even though it is like, there are certain things that it is good to use different tools, because you know, with a brush you'll get softer edges, you know, with a nib you can get more metallic angular things. So it does help to know how to use your tools, of course, and it is necessary. But as far as just the identity of the pencilers, I don't really switch tools that much because of that.
Okay, so you have to, I guess, to manage the balance between like what you want to apply for to enhance the drawing of the pencilers, and what also you want to put it into. I don't know if I'm clear enough, but I was also wondering if at some points you did tell an artist, so that's not how I would draw it if I was the penciler, so you should try in another way. Is it your role, or
Oh, no. That would be the easiest way to get fired. Because I think that and aspiring people wanting to get in, you don't just have to please your editor, you also have to please the penciler that you're working with, and have the best possible work that everybody's happy with. So if you clash with an artist, and for example, I'm really good friends with Philip.
No, I would not clashing, just no. Advise or
right. When I say clashing, I meant more, because it could be seen as that, because you know, everybody has their ego, be it big or small or something. And for me to go to a penciler and say, hey, you know, like this leg is terrible, or I'm going to draw this hand like that, it's again, it could be misconstrued, but then again, it depends on the relationship that you have with somebody. For example, I'm friends enough with Philip that if you draw something weird, I would say like, what's wrong with this? What, were you sleeping when you did this? But again, Philip doesn't have those issues, and I never worked with any penciler that really had those kinds of issues. So, but if it's somebody that I have a good relationship with and they did something very, very weird, I would mention it.
So you're switching to writing also with a no here, which is going to be one of the many Spawn spin-off titles this year. Can you tell me a little bit about just the origins of this project? So we understood that you were a big Spawn fan.
Yes. And so again, like I always wanted to work on Spawn, and the very first time I got to help on Spawn, I don't even remember. It was many years ago on Spawn. I don't remember. I inked a few pages. I was trying to remember the number. But I've always wanted to write. For many, many years, I've wanted to write. And me and Jonathan Glapion, that I was mentioning earlier, we're really good friends. We speak on the phone for at least 3 or 4 hours every day for the past 10 years. I speak more to Jonathan than to my wife.
She's maybe quite jealous.
Yes. So, and Jonathan has been wanting to draw for a very long time, and I've been wanting to write for a long time. And we decided just, you know, let's try to do something. So in this, without even approaching anybody, we just started brainstorming and coming up with stuff on the phone. And then one day we were at New York and we were having dinner with Thomas Healy, the editor of Spawn. And we were just, you know, chatting, and it came out. We started talking about ideas and all of that. And Thomas mentioned, and you know, like, if you guys have ideas, just let us know, because he loves Jonathan's art. Jonathan has been doing certain covers for them already. We did a small pitch because we already had ideas in mind. I told him like what we had planning. Thomas liked the idea enough so we could put a pitch together. I wrote a pitch. Jonathan drew like some concepts and all of that, because and we're co-creating everything together. But I'm handling the writing, and Jonathan is doing pencils, inks, and colors. So he's doing it all. We did that pitch. We got a meeting with Todd. We were on the phone with Todd and Thomas for, I don't know, a good hour and a half or two, maybe, just trying to dissect and poke holes per se to see if the project was sound. And they liked it enough to give us a chance. And it's called No Home Here. It comes out in October. And it's Todd pretty much taking a chance on two inkers who have been working for him for quite a few years. And he allowed us to do this. It's a book. The book is, you don't need to read Spawn to follow this book, but it has origins in Spawn. So Spawn, I'm helping out right now as we speak on Spawn 353. In our story is going to take bits from Spawn number 5. Which is a story that has this infamous serial killer called Billy Kincaid. There's this little girl there, Shirley Johnson, who appears in only like 2 panels, if I'm not wrong, and she gets brutally murdered right away, and she doesn't appear anymore. And we are getting that little girl, and she's the main character of our story, together with another character. But that's where it all starts. The story starts with Shirley kind of stuck in this time loop, reliving her death over and over again, being murdered and over and over and over again. So it starts a bit heavy per se, but my idea in this was, because Spawn, he's an anti-hero, but he does heroic things. And in my mind, it was, what if she didn't die? What if she was still alive in that freezer, mutilated, suffering, almost on the brink of death, but she didn't die? And through a little crack, she saw Spawn come in, and Spawn kicked Billy Kincaid's ass, and he just took him, and he left her to die. What's the consequences of when a hero doesn't do heroic things? And that's the basis for when this started. And again, then we introduced this other character called the Stranger, and he breaks that loop that she's in, and the story propels from there. And I can't really say much more because it gives spoilers for issue 1 right away. But I mean, Jonathan is doing like such amazing art, and we were both nervous to a certain degree. It's his first time doing the full chores of art, my first time writing, and both of us creating something. But Thomas and Todd and everything, they've been so hands off and just so supportive. It's been an amazing time.
Yeah, because when I first read the pitch about No Here, I was just like, wow, this is, like you said, heavy and very dark, and even for the Spawn universe, like very gloomy.
Yes.
And I was really attracted to it in a kind of bizarre way, because I'm really into a gloomy and horror stuff.
Yeah.
But I was really thinking about, but why would you make the premises of your book about a young girl being murdered? That was really hard. Aren't you afraid that it was going to be too dark?
No, because like I said, it starts in a dark place, and it is definitely, we both lean to horror quite a bit. But again, it's not all just that torture per se, let's call it. Just the fact of, and again, if you go, like you see Todd's social media or mine or something, we already released the image of her new look, and she has the clown makeup and everything, which is like, why? What happened in all of this time? Why does she has this look now? All of that will play a part in the story. So again, it does remind me a bit of Spawn in the beginning. Not that Spawn is not still a violent, anti-hero. He is. It's the nature of the character. But we do pick up from that. But it's not dark and gloomy to the point of depression per se. It's I feel it's a pretty cool like action story, and has like really cool beats. But it does have a lot of horror to it.
And my last question was, how do you feel that maybe the fact that you were inking all the work that you did is was also maybe a learn to write, even if you were doing the visual part, you learn how to see how the written was transformed into a drawing.
Oh no, it definitely helped me a lot, because first of all, even as an inker, I was always a bit talkative per se, so I was always asking for the scripts, which inkers don't get the scripts a lot of time because it's the penciler who deals with it, but I was always asking for them because it's something that I wanted to do. So even when I was working with Robson on Aquaman and Kelly Sudaconic was writing, Kelly was gracious enough to send scripts right away, also my way, so that allowed me to learn a lot from it. Some editors at DC, especially Andrea Shea, she was really nice in sharing a lot of scripts with me. So that allowed me to learn, and it allowed me something that it also helps in the writing, which was I could read the script and then I could see, for example, how Robson would draw it. So how we would interpret the script, certain beats, like the changes that he would do, how to write certain things. Now working with Frank and Philip and seeing it's different. Even the way Frank tells a story is just, I mean, it's Frank Miller is just, he does his own thing, but then even to just the balance between the story and the art, and then he does layouts right away. Even though I wasn't directly involved either in writing or layouts or anything, I always tried to absorb as much of it as I could. And even not really working with it, but from Todd, just hearing how he's always very open to asking the artists he works with, what do they want to draw and that kind of stuff. It's what made me and Jonathan also wanting to do something, because it's we can talk and we can play to each other's strengths of what we want to do. And because again, himself as an inker, inking also helped him a lot grow his artistic chops in drawing and all of that, because it is a muscle that we are flexing per se. And even though I wasn't doing the storytelling, I was paying close attention to it, both from the script and the penciler's perspective.
So is the next step for you to be drawing everything?
Not anytime soon. I'm drawing a cover here and there for Todd as well. Todd and Thomas have been nice enough to let me draw some covers. It just got solicited, one for Gunslinger, and there's one or two more down the pipe already done. I would like to be able to, because I've been writing some short stories on my own, I would like to be able to illustrate it myself, probably just pencils, inks, and zipatones now, because I'm a little bit addicted to it because of what we did on Ronin, and that is something that Philip pushed me to learn, and he helped me learn, and I quite enjoy it now. I have no skill whatsoever for colors, so it ends at zipatones and grays. I would like to be able to illustrate some of those my own, but with no pressure of trying to give it to an editor. Maybe something for me to publish online on my website, almost just even giving back to the fans, share some stories that I could write and illustrate myself. That's as far as I'm thinking right now. So more than that, actually, like for example, a monthly book or something, I would never be able to do it. I see what Jonathan is doing right now, and he's just a freak of nature in how he's being able to pencil, ink, and color and all that. I don't have those chops, to be honest.
Okay, well, we'll be looking forward to know him here and the rest of the stuff. Thank you so much for your time, Daniel.
My absolute pleasure.